Chapter 2, Part 2, The Zenith of Earth. The thick ionized orange clouds wave away as the shape of the ship pushes slowly through. The large starship becomes a more visual as the Crazy Horse name appears on its hull tucked away in the nebula. The lights were dimmed on the ship to not be noticed by unwelcome forces that were perhaps hunting them. The view shifted to the communication array and into the chamber. Why is the instinct of every officer in Starfleet to shoot if buttons don't work? An enlisted man complained about replacing the burnt panel with a groan of annoyance. I think it's the same thing if we're wondering why Klingon ships don't have windows or escape pods. Another replied, leaning against the wall, playing with a tool in his hand. Placing the panel on the ground, that is for efficiency, to focus on the task at hand, and if they die in their glory, then there is also no honor of having escape pods, which not one ship has in the Klingon Imperial Navy. He grabs the tool and sees the complicated situation in front of him. Would you mind helping out with this? I can report you to Royal Commander Ryan. The man pushed off the wool and smirked a bit. Yeah, fine. It's not like you can do anything without my help anyway. In Astromatics Lab, the large map of the Grecian Union space they knew to the Federation space was providing errors at best. Vlad shrugged a bit, trying to calculate and provide more accurate information to the map. We might be approaching this the wrong way. It feels like we are in a fog. He looked at the woman. Fictive one, that is, not to bait a logical answer out of the Vulcan. T'Pring was tapping her finger on her arm as she had them crossed over each other. That might be the answer. We have to start from 0 or 0. Most Starfleet ships that dare to cross the realities of university are prepared. We are not. We are, as you said, in a fog in a known galaxy that is now totally strange for us. She looked at Vlad. Perhaps we use the fog as a map we know, and use the areas we scanned as real data that clears the fog. Looking back at the console, so, like a layer based on real data. Interesting. He typed out the filters and parameters that redefined the map as he looked around, showing many stars becoming blurry and only Bajor and the parts of where they traveled being shown. Based on real data, this is what we are seeing. A brief nod to the information that was shown. Now is the best optional timing to scan on long range to show information we need without conflict. T'Pring stepped forward, snapping her fingers over the buttons. I will input the information that matters to us. It would be unwise to focus on something else that doesn't concern us in the first place. The data string of both frequencies on profile of both Lieutenant Zira and Lieutenant Cell appeared. We need to scan their DNA profiles. A scan was initiated and a long-range scans started. I would add the quantum key of our reality to that profile to filter out the duplicates. Vlad stated, placing some more filters into the search. 3 bleeps appeared on the galaxy map. 1 was red, 2 were green. Vlad narrowed his eyes, looking at the results. It seems we got 2 Lieutenant Cells and 1 Lieutenant Zira. Taking a moment to process it, Trill, Sol, and Nausicaa. Tapping on the 3 systems, but the frequency on Nausicaa comes in line with this reality, so we can ignore that cell. Then 2 systems show Trill and Sol. The information was there, but something was itching at T'Pring that she couldn't put a finger on. Why these 2 systems? They were kidnapped from our reality to be brought to these specific locations. Why? Tapping on into the system, best to provide detailed information to the briefing, so we all know what we are dealing with. Looking back at T'Pring, agreed, Lieutenant, Vlad confirmed formally and smiles softly to himself as he prepares the scans. It was getting back to scanning the unknown and reading raw data just how he liked it. The senior staff had gathered all in the briefing room, thought there were some faces that were not seen often in this gathering. Ensign RaWolfe temporarily replaced the function of Chief Medical Officer until Lieutenant Cell was brought back. Commander Kavat, the brute-looking Klingon, was the wing commander, speaking with his deputy, Lieutenant Sidre Till. Another person who was not there regularly was also from the flight deck, Lieutenant Patran, the combat information officer. Vilo walked into the room as everyone stood up at attention as she walked to the front. Please, take your seat. Commander Vlad and Lieutenant Taprin got further information on our current predicament. She saw everyone sit back down and took a seat herself. Please, enlighten us with the information you have gained. Giving a brief and respectful nod, Vlad took the stand as Taprin agreed to let him do the presentation for their findings. With a tap, a digital foggy map of the galaxy was shown that only a few locations showing that were not blurry. We have been tinkering with the scans and our internal computer for a while now to make sense of our output. So we scanned for information that is known in this reality, and it would take a decade to rescan everything to figure out what the condition and fate of this reality is. So we lowered our priority to only our crew members that are, displaced from our universe. 2 dots appeared on the galaxy map as one was in the star system of Trill and the other on Sol. Our scans brought us to these systems. Are they named the same as in our reality? We don't know, but we can provide you with long-range scans. Let's start with the simple one, Trill. A zoom in on the star system is shown as the planets and other astrometrics are shown. The scans indicate a colder and more mechanical Trill than what we have known Trill for. Most likely it suffered the same fate as Bajor. The mention came in hard for those people at the table. Both Salira and Sidra looked particularly uncomfortable with the idea of seeing their home star system in this condition. Taprin noticed the discomfort in the room and took a deep breath. Please consider that this reality is not ours. Our home are still safe, and we have to accept this reality as a new uncharted space. Ah, yes, Lieutenant Taprin is correct. What you see is what happened in this universe, not ours. Vlad continued, thankfully for the logic response that had more emotional value than he had presumed coming from the Vulcan. We received the location of our Lieutenant Zira from Trill. Initial scans show that the atmosphere is not clear. The planet is shrouded with an unknown mechanical mist. Further inspections show that we might be dealing with a defense spore that can be problematic when we go and pull out Lieutenant Zira. The planet of Trill is zoomed in. The kilometer-high needles rise from the ocean floor, acting as a thermal vent for potential massive processing that is happening in the depths of the ocean floor. If these are the Borg we know, it would make sense that a certain amount of production is happening down there that requires cooling. Vlad switches the planet around to a bleep. The caves of Makala, or at least how we know it as. Taking a deep breath, this is where Lieutenant Zira is, or her frequency is violent. He shows a frequency being high-pitched. Why is that so? Tanara asks, looking at the data of her junior officer. Is it different from Dr. Cell? Giving a brief nod, significantly different, Taprin hooked in on the question that security's chief asked. With the defenses, these fire in the oceans, we are presuming we are dealing with an advanced Borg server, with Lieutenant Zira being the key in this process in some way or form. Then the view changed from Trill to the star system Sol. This also looked different from what they knew it was supposed to be looking like. Then there is Sol. I will address the difference between Dr. Cell and Lieutenant Zira in a minute. Vlad gave the senior staff some assurance that he was getting to it. Earth was covered in a metallic framework that shows spikes of interference that turned the planet blurry for a second. Earth is covered in what seems to be a Dyson lattice. It functions as a grid to millions of satellites. The earlier handshake signal that Crazy Horse had to deal with originated from this location. The signal broadcast has been decrypted, and basically it's named Unified True Signal, Taprin explained, crossing her arms and looking at Earth. We suspect that Earth functions as a subspace broadcast to keep billions connected to the hive mind. Rena blinked a few times as her eyes scanned the map. But if these scans are concluded, why does it not spread further? An interesting question we don't have a concrete answer to. The theory is that the planet, like Trill, are required to process information that is needed to connect everyone to this hive cluster, but has its limits of reach. And thus you see the reach in front of you with the Borg broadcast that can process. Vlad explained with a bit too much joy in his voice as he quickly corrected his tone. Back to the topic at hand. The moon of Earth is structurally altered. It is a massive crystalline spire that rises from Tycho crater. We suspect that it acts as an amplifier or a broadcasting signal to the outer colonies. He placed the focus back on Earth. Earth is the real problem right now. Initial scans indicate that it has a defensive platform and massive serial processing station. We suspect that it's for those drones that are not compliant with the broadcast to function collectively from a different need. So, basically a resource grinding system? Surreal blurred out and noticed the eyes on her with some level of surprise. Her feathers went down, embarrassed by his statement, and she looked at Philo, who gave her a soft smile that it was okay. A brief nod came from Vlad. Quite accurate, Lieutenant, but before anyone worries, Dr. Cell is so far the one having a calming frequency in comparison to Lieutenant Zero. She is located what we formerly knew as San Francisco. So they are both fine? Philo asked the loaded question everyone was wondering but not daring to ask. Looking at his captain, Vlad nods slowly. The data shows that they are, but in what kind of condition we do not know. With that, he sat down as this reality Earth disappears from the holographic map. For a moment, Vilo had to consider the options and nodded slowly, placing her hands over each other. Commander Kavat, get your Red Barons ready for scouting missions. I need more data to ensure a safe route. Looking at the Zakdon, Lieutenant Patran, I need you to work with Lieutenant Prun to gather as much information on the scans that the Crazy Horse and the Red Barons are gathering so that we can provide a solid way in and out. A nod came from Patran, already noting it on his pad, as did Prun. Kavat, however, tapped his finger on the table and finally spoke. What is the first target? Trill or Earth? Viola looked at Kavat and then back at the middle of the table, taking a deep breath. Trill, seeing some relief and disappointment in the mate's choice, she continued. Get the Barons out. Those scans compiled, and we can extract Lieutenant Zero quicker and get ready to retrieve Dr. Sal. Everyone has their respective duties. Dismissed. The staff stood up, speaking with each other, and left the room as Vilo sat back in her chair, letting the information sink in about what nightmare reality they had been pulled into. This was only the beginning. It was her task to get them all back home.